Everybody, thank you for joining us for today's video. My name is David DeMars, and I'm a certified professional coach based in Las Vegas, Nevada. And my guest today is Ana Lopez de Guerenu. Hi, Ana.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for doing this video with me. I really am happy, and I was excited to do this with you. Thank you. Ana is a coach. Ana's a coach and psychologist based in Germany. And I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about what you do with your clients, what kind of work you do, and also how you got started in this work.
Hi, David. So thank you again very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, as you said, I am a psychologist and a coach. I am currently based in Berlin, Germany. I do work with clients. I have different sorts of topics. My favorite probably is working with couples and on topic of relationships, which is always based on the relationship itself. So we always start with the person's, like how they treat themselves, what's their self-view is. The techniques that I mostly use are emotionally oriented or emotionally focused therapy. The coaching capacitation that I got was like a deep spiritual based coaching. So it's based on like the very deep values, which I also find very helpful because it helps the person to understand like what deeply motivates them and not only focus like on the outcome. And so right now I'm also getting an MBA in family therapy, which will help me be even more like in depth with the topic of relationship, which, as I said, is the one that I enjoy most.
That's great. And for those of you who want to look at Ana's YouTube channel, she has a channel and does videos too. The link will be down below, and you can also contact Ana that way if you'd like to get any kind of sessions or counseling with her. Now, I am in this work because of my own personal experiences. I had CPTSD for many years. It's been a while now, but that's what got me into this work. I think first was posting videos on YouTube over 8 years ago, realizing that there wasn't much information about CPTSD and the experiences I had. And if there were 20 something years ago, I may have not done this again and got myself in a worse place, just having availability to some of the information, being privy to it. So is that kind of what happened with you, Ana? Is that kind of similar story for you?
In a sense, it is similar. So I also started my channel, but at the time I was mistakenly diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which later I found out that was incorrect. And I also had CPTSD like yourself. I had a passion for psychology since I was very little, so I wouldn't say that that was always there. It got even strengthened maybe because I saw how effective it is and how the tools can help you change your life completely. And I'm super happy to be able to also provide that to other people. But yeah, the attempt to start a YouTube channel and talk about things that were not there at the time is same as yours, I would say.
Mm. Yeah, here we use the DSM, and it's not even, CPTSD is not even listed in there. And I've come across many professionals that never even heard of it over the years. There's a lot more that are aware of this disorder now today, for sure. I know therapists and psychologists that treat this disorder now. So it's great to know that. And it's a very common misdiagnosis for someone to be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder when in fact they have CPTSD. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that today. The biggest symptom, as you know, Ana, one of the biggest symptoms coming out of a relationship with someone who has borderline personality disorder is a lot of self-doubt. So the longer someone is closer to that person could be traumatized, and they come out with tons of self-doubt. They start wondering, is it me that has all their toxic behaviors? Is it me? Do I have borderline personality disorder? So I think that's really interesting that you had that kind of story. Let's dive into just some of the similarities, and because there's so much overlap with these two disorders, and that's kind of why people are misdiagnosed with it. If I just go briefly down some of the most common traits or characterizations of borderline personality disorder, you'll see people who are already aware or knowledgeable of CPTSD, you'll see how similar it is. Borderline personality disorder is a cluster B personality disorder. It's characterized by unstable moods, unstable relationships, and self-identity, usually due to childhood trauma, but it could also be genetic. There's definitely a genetic predisposition to it. It can include self-harming, suicidal thoughts, tendencies, and behaviors. A lot of this is kind of CPTSD, very similar, very similar. I wrote CPTSD is kind of an umbrella term. It could be, so many other problems and mental illnesses due to CPTSD. Usually CPTSD is repeated trauma, where PTSD is a single event. I know you know that, Anna. And what I'm noticing with my clients is the trauma that they endure in adulthood from these relationships is a triggering, unhealed, untreated trauma in their childhood. And so if you really put it all together, you're talking about somebody who could be traumatized for many, many years and suffering from a lot of these symptoms. People with CPTSD have difficulty regulating their emotions, difficulty in trusting people again. And then you've got, and I think it's important to understand the primary diagnosis, right, Anna? I mean, someone with borderline personality disorder can also have CPTSD, very, very common. But I think there's a primary diagnosis. Am I correct that someone with borderline is gonna, and even if they have both, their primary diagnosis will be borderline personality disorder, where the subtrain or subdiagnosis or secondary would be CPTSD. Somebody that has just CPTSD, that would be their primary diagnosis. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, if I can add something, I would say
Please.
that they can definitely be comorbid. So as you said, they are both product of trauma and repeated trauma, and even re-traumatization, for example, in the adulthood. As you said, people who have suffered trauma a lot of the time end up in these turbulent relationships because they are the dynamics that they learned and they repeat later in the adulthood. But anyway, so I would say that, of course, there is this primary and secondary diagnosis, and probably while in the process of healing, you can start noticing that CPTSD will start disappearing as you reorganize the information about trauma in your head. There is not a scientific consensus on what ages exactly, for example, trigger like the trauma, because I have heard opinions that, for example, if it happens like very much in the childhood from like 0 to 3 years old, then it's a personality disorder because the psyche is just too young to handle it. And then if it's like 7 onward, then it's probably a CPTSD. Everyone is different. We cannot say particularly like what are the criteria. But I would say that like in the case of borderline personality disorder, the trauma just kind of got deeper into your shell like of yourself, and it has damaged like more parts of it. While with CPTSD, it's basically just kind of like information that cannot be organized in your head. And when you start like making sense of it and putting it in this like little boxes, it becomes much easier because then you can kind of like make sense of your experience and not relive it all the time anymore. While with borderline, it affects like the way that you interpret reality even later on in life. So it's more difficult, although not impossible, to change it.
Very important. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, we all are different. We all have different brains. We all have different lives and experiences. So we all react differently to trauma. Something I've noticed with people with borderline personality disorder is it seems to almost start at birth with that lack of bonding and attachment, very disorganized attachment with their mother. I've seen that to be very prominent. And people that have CPTSD were neglected in their childhood, but it seems that that trauma wasn't so early on. You're right. I had CPTSD, and I think my trauma started at least by age 5, 6 is when it started. It was really good. The first 5 years were really formidable, but very, very good, very healthy. It was a nice, yeah. And I think that had a lot to do with it. But then you have the genetic predisposure that I think is prominent. Yeah. What do you think, or do you want to share kind of what or made you have that BPD diagnosis, do you think? What the difference was?
As you said, actually, CPTSD is not even in the DSM. So there are obviously now more and more psychologists that do consider it or treat it as it is. But at the time, I think there was too little information on it, and just the person who treated me, they were not aware of it. Although I
Mhm.
personally like read a lot and I suspected it for myself, but because I was self-harming, I had like an episode where the trauma that I had in my childhood started coming up. And I had a lot of like episodes of derealization, you know, the typical um for the CPTSD, when you kind of relive the trauma again and again and again because you cannot like put it in its place. And my kind of like way out of it was self-harm, because with this like physical sensation, I kind of got myself out of this like imaginary world back to the real world. So when I came to her, I had like a lot of physical damage, let's say, which was obvious to, I don't want to like, be very explicit, but so there was like obvious signs of that I was harming myself. And I think that was what triggered the diagnosis. So I
Yes.
actually didn't have like the rest, so like erratic behavior or like emotional dysregulation throughout my life. It was like very specific, periodical when the trauma started coming back, which yeah, should have like thrown the specialist off, but unfortunately it was not the case.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people watching this video that can relate to that. Have had very
Mhm.
similar experiences and at least concerns and thoughts. And I want to be clear, anybody watching this video, we don't self-diagnose. I'm
Mhm.
hoping this video offers some clarity and some information that might help lead you guys to what might be your problem. But I always recommend go to a professional. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
And it's maybe even better to talk to several because, as we said, a professional is also just a person, and diagnosing people is very difficult based on just 1 hour or 2 hours of talking with
Oh yeah,
you. It's good to have, if you have the possibility, it's good to have like several opinions, because maybe one person can see something that the other one can't, and then yeah, you can kind of stick to the professional maybe that you feel like can be of the most benefit to you.
that's right. That's right. Just like anything else, if we don't get the help we need or what we're looking for, we go seek a second, third, fourth opinion. I know a lot of professionals may not diagnose someone with borderline personality disorder until like 6 months of counseling them.
Mhm.
They aren't going to be quick to do that, which is good, which is really good.
Exactly.
So yeah, don't give up, guys. If you see someone and you want to know this, take your time, be honest, be vulnerable, tell them the truth,
Mhm.
and if you're not getting somewhere, eventually, go see someone else. And even if you get diagnosed, it's always good to get a second, third opinion, like Anna said. So
Mhm.
there's a very distinct diagnostic criteria for both disorders. And so those are the differences. And with lots of overlap, you have to meet the criteria. And these you could say are spectrum disorders, right? I mean, we could talk about all the symptoms and traits of both, and a lot of you guys might identify with both. It doesn't mean you have either one, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It should be done by a professional that can stand by the decision. And as you said, it's great if they don't do it like it happened to me, for example, on the first or the second session, but they take their time to get to know you, to get to know like your story, how you react. And yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the differences that we can. I wrote a couple down, if you don't mind, or do you want to go first?
Sure. No, go on.
You want me to go first? Um, I know, and it's not even black or white. So very common with someone with borderline personality disorders have that real consistent negative self view. I don't see it as prominent with people that have CPTSD. Maybe low self worth, low self respect, these kinds of things, low self esteem, but it's not this just consistent negative self view that everything concludes to I'm a horrible person, I'm bad, I'm just stupid, I'm something like this. You'll hear someone say that, think that momentarily with CPTSD, but it seems so ingrained in who the person is with borderline. Um, and then the fear of abandonment. We know that that's a huge, huge issue with people with borderline personality. So it's very, very prominent in most of them. And people with CPTSD could have fear of abandonment. They've had experiences where people have, abandoned them, whether it's emotionally or just in the relationship completely. But something I've noticed with the differences is the people with borderline personality disorder will take these frantic efforts to avoid abandonment. And they may perceive abandonment where it doesn't exist. They believe their partners are leaving them. They don't love them anymore. They're cheating on them. I don't see it as prominent with people with CPTSD. How about you, Anna? You notice the same?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that maybe for the people with CPTSD, it's kind of even more with trusting people. So in borderline, it's
Yeah.
just like fear of abandonment, and in CPTSD, it's more kind of like it takes them more time to actually open up to people. It takes them kind of more time, so they maybe build up more walls or like more, tests to people to see that they will not like do them wrong or abandon them. So it's kind of a bit more distancing. And I would say that, yeah, in case, of course, there are different, of course, example borderlines. We are talking more like a classic, type, but they will try to even like cling to a person or like manipulate them or, like act in a way that they want to assure that the person won't abandon them like actively.
Yeah, that's right. I notice people with borderline tend to have more of an avoidant attachment style, where there's that disorganized, but there's avoidancy. But then I've noticed people with CPTSD to be more avoidant. They're more able to be isolating, more avoidant and push people away, not trust them, like you said, right in the beginning of a relationship, and kind of discard, throw people away real fast and easy. Whereas the borderline dives right in, don't they? And it's like no boundaries and start, their favorite person idealizing, and things like that, where the CPTSD person really is treading really lightly and finds a reason why they're not trustworthy and throws them away, and lots more isolation, wouldn't you say?
I would say that it's a bit personal, but also like in very general terms, I would probably agree. I would say that probably they both, since like trauma is something that leads to that very often, they present this like disorganized attachment where it can, especially with borderline, actually, it's good that you mentioned it because they also have this like intense cycles of idealization and evaluation, which CPTSD is not that common. And yeah, so then they can be kind of erratic and like come here, no, go away, come here, no, go away. And so that becomes less of like an anxious attachment, but more of like a disorganized. So they would like push you away, but they want you closer. And yeah, but I would also say that they more are like anxious attachment.
Yeah. And I think splitting could be a similarity and difference in the degree of it. Would you say? I mean, I think there's some splitting with people that have CPTSD, how easy it is for them to not trust someone and get rid of them. But the borderline, it's like more like you're Satan, you're evil, you're this bad, horrible person, bam, 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 and it can vacillate quickly back to you're okay, you're a good person.
Yeah, and it's very intense because like to some degree, I think yeah, it can happen in in many sorts of people and even people who are like not technically diagnosed with anything, but it's just the intensity that makes it pathological.
That's right. And then self-harm, suicidal behaviors, thoughts, feelings, actions, definitely a part of CPTSD, but not the intensity. I think people with CPTSD are less likely to have that, even a lesser degree, but maybe at all. And then you have self-reliance, and I think that's an important one. I think that because these seem to be developmental as we grow up, and it's a lack of emotional attention and really parents giving us some kind of security, emotional security. I think the person with borderline didn't feel emotionally secure during development, not even to say that the parents weren't giving them that attention or security, but they felt that they had no security growing up in development.
Yeah. So it's actually like it doesn't matter what really happened. What matters is how you perceived it.
That's right. And I think, and I've noticed that people with borderline are way less self-reliant. They can't make themselves feel secure, reassure themselves, things like that. And it may jump to paranoia thoughts and stuff. Whereas someone with CPTSD, my clients that have just CPTSD I've noticed there is some self-reliance. They're able to pick themselves up off the floor when they smack down at the worst time of their lives. There's a part of them that can reassure themselves a little bit, be a little bit self-reliant, pick themselves up, say, I'm not that bad of a person, where someone with BPD may completely lack that and completely reliant on others. And then you have parentification. I haven't noticed that with people with CPTSD as I have with BPD.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say that maybe there are the sort of like high functioning, let's say borderline personality disorder that
Yeah.
they can like tend to themselves, they have normal lives, like normal jobs, but it's just a percentage. So like if we take again like a classical case, the more common one, like the one that yeah is maybe um occurring more often, probably yeah, I would agree with you on that.
That's an excellent point for sure. I think when you have someone that is so unstable, then you have this impulsivity. And I've always said that you'll see this in the biggest areas of our life, and that's living, where we're living, moving a lot, a job, stop and starting jobs, can't hold a job, and relationships, stop and starting suddenly. The higher spectrum borderline I've seen may not be able to hold a job at all, constantly moving from one person's house to another or across state lines, just suddenly. And then the relationship problems starting and stopping suddenly. But the lower spectrum seems to be able to keep a job. They may be able to keep a job for 10, 20 years, be quite successful, maybe. They may not move a lot, but the relationship part, the sudden stopping and starting is what I've seen prevalent in all borderlines. Yeah. Have you?
Yeah, I would say so.
Mhm. So why do you think we enter relationships? Why do you think we enter relationships with toxic people, specifically people with like narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, or the entire cluster B? Why do you
Um,
think? You know?
yeah, so this is what I wanted to mention. So thanks for asking this question. A lot of the times, the people that come to therapy are the relatives or like the partners of a person who has these problems. And it is always useful to just repeat one more time that you cannot help a person unless they want to be helped. So it is important to focus on like why we, especially if it's a choice, so if it's your partner, like if it's your parents, you didn't choose them, like you already have them. But if it's your partner, then you need to look inside yourself and ask yourself why did you end up with this person? Because it's not just, like random. It's because you have connected on some level. And of course, our primary relationships, so with our primary caregivers, are the relationships that influence us the most in this regard. So we choose something that feels familiar, even if it's unbearable, but it's something that we perceive as safe, even if it's anything but safe. So let's say if you grew up with people who are not emotionally available, or maybe that had some personality disorders or abuse problem, like substance abuse problems. If you grew up around like chaotic relationships, it will probably be reflected unless you consciously treat it later on in life. It can be reflected in your choice of partner because it's just something that and it doesn't like ring a bell in you. So a person who grew up in a household where it was non-toxic and healthy and supportive, like they will not stand a day with a person who has like a BPD or NPD because they will just say this is something really strange and I don't want to be part of it, and they will just kind of distance themselves. But then if this is something that has been normalized to you, you will not see it as something, to be afraid of or to stay away from. So yeah, I would say that the short answer would be that.
I
What
use
do you
the
think?
analogy of petting a cat. If you pet a cat from head to tail, right? They
Yeah,
like it, but the second you go opposite way, what do? Right? Freak out.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a good point. If you're having long-term relationships with toxic people, or many of them, it's conditioning. You're being pet from head to tail. There's something not terribly wrong with that, even though it might feel bad. And I think that's the correlation And it's the hardest thing for me to point out to my clients. It's the hardest thing for people to identify is emotional neglect in childhood. And it's amazing how hard it can be for people to identify that, because you have so many factors. Like I don't want to have an imperfect childhood. I don't want to say anything bad about my parents, that they failed, anything like that. And I think it's just, and it's hard to see what you didn't get your whole childhood. You know what I mean? If you never saw that, if I never let you see the color red, it might be hard to, and you still have never seen it. It might be hard to say, hey, I've never seen the color red and even understand what that means. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's super difficult, but so necessary. I see it in so many people that you ask them, like, how was your childhood? And they were like, perfect. My parents are so great. They were the best parents I could wish for. And then you start digging and you just dig some stuff up, And
just a little dig, like just a little tiny, like a shovel this big, and you just go blink and you go, see?
Yeah, and then like you find out the stuff and they don't even perceive it as something. So like they would say, yeah, they did me up, but like that's what everyone did at the time, or they had no other, like no other way of doing that because I was not like an obedient child or something like that. And no, this is not normal, no matter how disobedient you were. But yeah, so it's very important and it's absolutely necessary, like as a stage of your development as a human being. So you will not be able to be like a fully formed adult that takes responsibility for themselves unless you let your parents go. And there is a stage where you need to hate your parents. So usually it's your adolescence, so your teenage years, like early 20s at most, and you need to separate from your parents. And for that, you need to understand that they're human, they make mistakes, and they have wronged you many, many times. And then comes the stage where you see that, but you also accept them for the imperfect human beings that they are. And it's not about hating your parents forever. It's about passing that stage, accepting that happened, and then moving on. Because, like, like in my case, my parents were not horrible parents, but they were also not perfect. And there was a moment in my therapy journey where, like, for a year or two, my relationship with them became worse because I realized like everything that they did wrong. And then I managed to also reorganize it in my head, and now we have a great relationship. So I'm just saying that, I mean, of course, there are things that are more difficult than others, and in general terms, I'm lucky in that sense. But yeah, so it's something that's absolutely necessary to do, and I think it's counterproductive to hold on to this like beliefs of parents that never did anything wrong, because like no matter how good of a parents they were, they definitely did something wrong.
That's right. The perfect parent is the one that can identify their mistakes, apologize to the children, and learn from them. That's perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As you can get.
Yeah.
Right. I'm interested here, listening to you just talking about helping couples. A problem that I hear a lot with my clients is they did seek couples counseling. They tend to do that before they come see me. They find out that it's not working, their partner is disordered, and then they come see me. And I hear their experiences. I hear a lot of their experiences. And I always wonder how therapists, psychologists approach a couple where they know that one of them has borderline, has narcissistic, histrionic, sociopath, and how they go about handling that. I've heard different scenarios where they'll pull one partner to the side, or they won't say anything until that couples counseling falls apart, and then the one person keeps seeing them, and then they let them know. How do you handle something like that? Just curious.
No, I haven't had like a very extreme case. So I have had couples that let's say the problem was more one person than the other. And then usually, because I don't treat people, like I'm not a psychiatrist, so I cannot, depending on the country, like by law, I cannot treat the people with personality disorder, or like schizophrenia or something. I can support them with like counseling or therapy, but it's not like treatment. So yeah, I would in that case always recommend, like, actually we are obligated by law to do that. So if I suspect that someone has a personality disorder or like bipolar or whatever it is, I refer them to a specialist. So I see, like I say, look, I think you should talk to this person. I'm not saying anything. You just talk to them. They're the specialist, so they might be able to like diagnose you or help you. And it's going to be helpful because like as long as you withhold information from your clients, the rapport is like broken. So you cannot have like a good relationship anymore. But I have had cases where it was not very productive to continue couples therapy before like resolving some certain issues with of a person. And then I always offer, because sometimes people have like their proper therapist and then they come to you as a couples therapist, and I either indicate to them like talk about this with your therapist and then come back, or if they don't have like their proper therapist, I invite them to also like have like a couple of sessions with me to resolve the issues, because it can be unproductive to do it in front of the other person. They may not like open up to the same extent or such. So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, fully you did. If I talk to couples, I always like to see them individually first. Yeah, for sure. And what I've noticed the most common is, as far as the victim goes, they might get the person with the personality disorder to see someone on their own. And as you know, that goes one, maybe two sessions, and that seems to be it. And then they might try couples counseling when all that we can control is ourselves. And I think that you guys are gonna find the most help when you go find a professional just for you. And that's where you're gonna get to the root of the problems, because your life problems isn't other people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to just add a couple of things about couples therapy, because I think it's something that's like been emerging lately, and I see more and more people actually being interested in that. I would say that like a lot of the times, actually, my work as a couples counselor is to teach them to communicate better with each other, because they just kind of have like a different way of communicating their like needs and wants, and that can be enough. But if you see that there is like a deeper issue, then of course it has to be treated like separately. And yeah, so the second thing that I wanted to add was that sometimes you see like a person kind of like bring the other person into therapy, not like without their consent, but almost, and they're like treat them. So like they are the problem, and it's actually never like that. So if there is a dynamic, you need two to tango. So like if your partner has a personality disorder, you definitely need therapy, just because this is how things work. And yeah, so maybe personal therapy and couples therapy, if you can afford that, can help you like maintain the relationship. Because if you just do therapy and then like the other person does nothing, there is a high chance that you also gonna like split up, because if you're gonna be like changing and healing and they are not gonna be doing so, yeah, there is a high chance that the relationship will not stand a chance.
That's a great point. The biggest problem I noticed with couples is what I just call a standoff. And it's like the communication slowly stopped in that relationship. And then they both get a little scared to, what I say, to go first, to be vulnerable first, and just say, hey, here's how I feel. I love you. And if you can just get them to do that, that usually is a quick fix. Hey, tell them you love them. Do you love them? Tell them what's wrong. Tell them how you've been feeling. Do that. You do that too. But if you're in a relationship where you're being neglected of what you need, there's no reciprocation. They're abusing you. I strongly suggest to not go to couples counseling, to seek your own private counseling. But is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, couples therapy works for mostly, as I said, like cases where people just need to learn to communicate better or something, in case there is like physical, verbal, economical, whatever type of abuse. If you feel unsafe, if you feel constantly like tormented by the relationship, seek help for yourself, because like you need to first put the oxygen mask, on yourself, and then try to care about other people.
That's right. That's right. And that's all we can control.
Anyway,
but relationship counseling is not going to help a severe, abusive, neglectful relationship with somebody who's severely unstable or has severe mental illness like borderline personality disorder. It's just not going to help. And I think it can even make things worse for the other person, for the victim. kind of solidify a lot of things that they're doubting and dealing with. Yeah.
I would say that it can also be kind of like the wake-up call for the other person, because if the therapist can recognize that the relationship is abusive, or the one part is like severely in danger or like suffering from the other, they can be the person to tell the victim, and they might listen because it's a professional. Although we all know that a lot of the times, like, we are the worst blind person. I don't know how it is in English, but like, the no one is so blind as the person who doesn't want to see. It goes something like that. So yeah, sometimes we are like willfully blind to, things that we know deep inside that are true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. I think seeing a professional that understands how to have a successful relationship will help a lot too. I can take a couple, or I can take an individual talking about their relationship and just say, hey, here's some basics about a relationship. Like, values have to match. They got to be the same. If this person doesn't value what you value morally, can't work. It can't work. Here's what your emotional needs are. If these aren't being met, you're going to feel worse. You're going to feel like this, and it's going to keep getting worse. And some of those basics seem to help people a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything you want to add? Yeah.
Mm,
Anything that we
no,
didn't talk about?
I don't think so.
I could go
Yeah,
on forever and forever. I
me
didn't
too,
want to do
but
that. Yeah.
like, we also have to think about like the people who are gonna watch that. We can do a part two if this, like, does well.
Yep.
And yeah, if people are interested in the topic, we can continue if you're up to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I encourage everybody to always ask questions down in the comment section. I try to always answer every question. Again, I'll put the link down to Anna's channel. What is your channel called again? Can't remember exactly.
It's called Anna Fits. Like,
Anna Fits.
yeah. You can also link my Instagram maybe, because I'm more active there. Like, I upload this like short form videos there. Yeah,
And they
but
have
I
a
will
way to
also,
contact you, Anna, if they want to
yeah,
contact you at all
on
through
my
there.
YouTube channel and on my Instagram, there are links to like everything. So yeah, you can find it there.
Great. And the
And I
best
will
help,
put the
guys.
comments as well on your channel, so that maybe I can answer something if you're not against it.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Before we go, what's the best thing that helped you heal, Anna? Can you say the number one thing?
Um, Finding the right therapist for me. So
Yeah.
really, it was a game changer. It was the best decision that I ever made in my life. She's the absolute angel. And yeah, like, we just had our 5-year anniversary. And yeah, now I do it more for like supervision and, like maintenance, so to say. But yeah, I would say that like finding the right facilitator is it's even more important than finding the right relationship, probably.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, good point. Um,
What about you?
yeah, I was gonna say it anyway, but I did everything, but it was the information first, and then the person asking the right questions for sure.
Mhm.
I went several years not knowing and trying and seeking through professionals that didn't know. I'm like, diagnose me with something, and they're like, no, there's nothing. We can't diagnose you with anything. We don't know. And and so I tried. I was extremely healthy. I stopped dating. I tried to be this like perfect human, but nothing helped until first I found out the information, and it was like the biggest relief to me.
Mhm.
And then with that information, finding the right person to ask the right questions. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
And I think, the best help you're ever going to get is the help from someone else. And you want to make it ever better, even better, hire another one. Have 2 or 3 people helping. I assist people healing with other therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists, and we'll even work together to give that person the best help. That's just what I've noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can manage that, that's great. Or at
If you,
least if you can find the one that like your person, yeah, you can take that as a base, and then like occasionally, look for some other people, maybe for some specific things
mhm,
also.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching this video. Please ask questions whatever you want down below. Follow Anna's, the link to Anna's YouTube channel, Instagram account, ask her anything you want. And if you guys would like us to do another video, let us know, tell us. Anything you want to add, Anna, before we go?
No, just thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. I absolutely loved it. And yeah, I hope that we get a lot of questions that we get to answer.
I do too. Thank you so much for doing this with me. And I appreciate you and look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Same.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.